हेलो माय डियर फ्रेंड्स, कैसे हैं आप लोग। उम्मीद करती हूँ आप सब अच्छे होंगे। फाइंड योर पैटर्न्स फ्रॉम द बुक थिंक लाइक अ मॉन्क, written by Jay Shetty. Along with accepting our fear, we must get personal with it. This means recognizing the situation in which it regularly appears. A powerful question to ask your fear again with kindness and sincerity as many times as necessary is, when do I feel you? After my initial work with fear at the monastery, I continue to identify all of the spaces and situations in which my fear emerged. I consistently saw that when I was worried about my exams, when I was worried about my parents or about my performance at school or getting in trouble, the fear always led me to the same concerns: how I was perceived by others. What will they think of me? My root fear influences my decision making. That awareness now prompts me when I reach a decisive moment to take a closer look and ask myself, is this decision influenced by how others will perceive me? In this way, I can use my awareness of my fear as a tool to help me make decisions that are truly in line with my values and purpose. Sometimes we can trace our fears through the actions we take, and sometimes it's the actions we are reluctant to take. One of my clients was a successful attorney, but she was tired of practicing law and wanted to do something new. She came to me because she was letting her fear stop. What if I jump and there's nothing on the other side? She asked me. That sounded like a branch question. So I kept probing. What are you really scared of? I asked her, then gently kept asking until eventually she signed and said, I have spent so much effort and energy building this career. What if I'm just throwing it all away? I asked again and finally we got to the root. She was afraid of failure and of being seen as less than an intelligent, capable person by others and by herself. Once she learned and acknowledged the true nature of her fear, she was on her way to recasting its role in her life. But first, she needed to develop some real intimacy with it. She needed to walk into her fear. One of the problems we identified was that she had no role models. All of the attorneys she knew were still practicing full time. She needed to see people who had successfully done some version of what she wanted to do. So, I asked her to spend time getting to know former attorneys who were now working in her new careers that they loved. When she did that, she not only saw that what she dreamed of was possible, she was also delighted to learn how many of those people said they were still applying skills that they had acquired and used to practice law. She wouldn't be throwing all of her hard work away after all. I also asked her to research jobs she might consider. Though that exercise, she found that many of the soft skills she had to learn to be successful attorneys, such as network, communication, teamwork, and problem solving, were highly sought after elsewhere too. By developing that intimacy with her fear, getting up close and examining what she was afraid of, she ended up with information that left her feeling more empowered and excited about the idea of switching careers. Patterns was distracting ourselves from fear are established when we are young. They are deeply ingrained, so it takes some time and effort to uncover them. Recognizing our fear patterns helps us trace fear to the root. From there, we can decipher whether there is truly any cause for urgency, or whether our fear can actually lead us to recognize opportunities to live more in alignment with our values, passion, and purpose. The cause of fear, attachment. The cure for fear, detachment. Though we are developing intimacy with our fear, we want to see it as its own entity, separate from us. When we talk about our emotions, we usually say we are that emotion. I am angry, I am sad, I am afraid. Talking to our fear separates it from us. and helps us understand that the fear is not us. It is just something we are experiencing. When you meet someone who gives off a negative vibe, you feel it, but you don't think that vibe is you. It's the same with your emotions. They are something we are feeling, but they are not us. Try shifting from I am angry to I feel angry. I feel sad, I feel afraid. A simple change that a profound one because it puts our emotions in their rightful place. Having this perspective calms down our initial actions and give us the space to examine our fear and the situation around it without judgment. When we track our fears back to their source, most of us find that they are closely related to attachment, our need to own and control things. We hold on to ideas we have about ourselves, to the material positions and standard of living that we think define us, to the relationships we want to be one thing even if they are clearly another. That is the monkey mind thinking. Our monk mind practices detachment. We realize that everything from our houses to our families is borrowed. Clinging to temporary things gives them power over us and they become sources of pain and fear. But when we accept the temporary nature of everything in our lives, we can feel gratitude for the good fortune of getting to borrow them for a time. Even the most permanent of possessions belonging to the most wealthy and powerful don't actually belong to them. This is just as true for the rest of us, and for many, indeed most of us, that impermanence causes great fear. But as I learned in the ashram, we can shift our fear to a soaring sense of freedom. Our teachers made a distinction between useful and hurtful fears. They told us that a useful fear alerts us to a situation we can change. If the doctor tells you that you have poor health because of your diet and you have fear disability or disease, that useful fear because you can change your diet. When your health improves as a result, you eliminate your fear. But fearing that our parents will die in a hurtful fear because we can't change the truth of the matter. We transform hurtful fears into useful fears by focusing on what we can control. We can't stop our parents from dying, but we use the fear to remind us to spend more time with them. In the words of Santi Deva, San, Shanti Deva. It is possible to control all external events, but if I simply control my mind, what need is there to control other things? This is detachment. When you observe your own reactions from a distance with your monk mind, making decisions with a clear perspective, there is a common misconception about detachment that I did like to address. People often equate detachment with indifference. They think that seeing things, people and experiences as temporary or seeing them from a distance diminishes our ability to enjoy life. But that's not the case. Imagine you are driving a luxury rental car. Do you tell yourself that you own it? Of course not. You know you only have it for the week, and in some ways that allows you to enjoy it more. You are grateful for the chance to drive a convertible down the Pacific Coast Highway because it's sometimes you won't always get to do. Imagine you are staying in the most beautiful Airbnb. It's got a hot tub, chef kitchens, ocean views. It's so beautiful and exciting. You don't spend every moment there dreading your departure in a week. When we acknowledge that all our blessings are like a fancy rental car or a beautiful Airbnb, we are free to enjoy them without living in constant fear of losing them. We are all lucky vacationers enjoying our stay in Hotel Earth. Detachment is the ultimate practice in minimizing fear. Once I identified my anxiety about disappointing my parents, I was able to detach from it. I realized I had to take responsibility for my life. My parents might be upset, they might not. I had no control over that. I could only make decisions based on my own values. Try this. Audit your attachments. ये जो है मैं शॉर्ट्स में डाल दूँगी, आप ज़रूर ट्राई करिए. ये कंटिन्यू करेंगे. मैनेजिंग शॉर्ट टर्म fears. Detaching from your fears allows you to address them. Years ago, a friend lost his job. Jobs are security, and we are all naturally attached to the idea of putting food on the table. Right away, my friend went into panic mode. Where we are going to get money? I am never going to get hired again. I am going to have to get 2 or 3 gigs to cover our bills. Not only did he make grim predictions about the future, he started questioning the past. I should have been better at my work. I should have worked harder and longer hours. When you panic, you start to anticipate outcomes that have not yet come to pass. Fear makes us fiction writers. We start with a premise, an idea of fear, what will happen if, then we spiral off, devising possible future scenarios. When we participate future outcomes, fear holds us back, impromising us in our imaginations. The Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca observed that our fears are more numerous than our dangers, and we suffer more in our imagination than reality. We can manage acute stress if we detach on the spot. There is an old Taoist parable about a farmer whose horse ran away. How unlucky, his brother tells him. The farmer shrugs. Good thing, bad thing, who knows? He says. A week later, the wayward horse finds his way home, and with it is a beautiful wild mare. That's amazing. This brother says, admiring the new horse with no small envy. Again, the farmer is unmoved. Good thing, bad thing, who knows? He says. A few days later, the farmer's son climbs up on the mare, hoping to tame the wild beast, but the horse bucks and rears, and the boy, hurled to the ground, breaks a leg. How unlucky, his brother says with a tinge of satisfaction. Good thing, bad thing, who knows? The farmer replies again. The next day, the young men of the village are called into military service, but because the son's leg is broken, he is excused from the draft. His brother tells the farmer that this surely is the best news of all. Good thing, bad thing, who knows? The farmer says. The farmer in this story didn't get lost in what if, but instead focus on what is. During my monk training, we are taught to don't judge the moment. I passed along the same advice to someone I advised who'd lost his job. Instead of judging the moment, he needed to accept his situation and whatever came of it. Focusing on what he could control, I worked with him on first slowing everything down, then acknowledged the facts of this situation. He had lost his job, period. He had lost his job, period. From there, he had a choice. He could panic or freeze, or he could take this opportunity to work with fear as a tool, using it as an indicator of what really mattered to him and to see what new opportunities might arise. When I asked him what he was most afraid of, he said it was that he wouldn't be able to take care of his family. I gently urged him to be more specific. He said he was worried about money, so I challenged him to think of other ways he might support his family. After all, his wife worked, so they had some money coming in. They weren't going to be out on the street. Time, he said. Now I have time to spend with my kids, taking them to and from school, helping them with their homework, and while they are at school, I actually have to time to look for a new job, a better one. Because he slowed down, accepted his fear, and gained clarity around it, he was able to diffuse his panic and see that fear was actually alerting him to an opportunity. Time is another form of wealth. He realized that while he had lost his job, he had gained something else very valuable. Using his newfound time, he was not only more present in his kids' lives, but he also ended up getting a new, better job. Refraining the situation stopped him from draining energy negatively and encouraged him to start applying it positively. Still, it's hard to not judge the movement and remain open to opportunity. When the unknown for future spins like a whirlwind through your body and brain, sometimes our panic or freeze responses rush ahead of us and make it difficult to suspend judgment. Let's talk about some strategies to help us amend panic and fear. Short circuit fear. Fortunately, a simple, powerful tool to short circuit the panic response is always with us, our breath. Before I give a talk, when I am standing off stage listening to my introduction, I will feel my heart beat faster and my hands getting moist. I have coached people who perform in front of full arenas and people who present at everyday meetings. And like the rest of us, they feel most of their physical fear physically, whether it's performance anxiety or social fears, such as before a job interview or attending a party. Our fear manifests in the body, and these bodily cues are the first signals that fear is about to take over. Panic and freezing are a disconnect between our bodies and our minds. Either our bodies go on high alert and rush ahead of our mental processes, or our minds are racing and our bodies start to shut down. As a monk, I learned a simple breathing exercise to help realign my body and mind and stop fear from stopping me. I still use it every time I am about to give a talk to a large group, enter a stressful meeting, or go into a room full of people I don't know. ट्राई दिस मैं ये सब ट्राई दिस शॉर्ट्स में डाल दूँगी दोस्तों, आप वहाँ से मेरे शॉर्ट्स देख लीजिए, उसमें सब मिलेंगे ट्राई दिस. See the whole story. Breath is useful on the spot. Breath is useful on the spot. But some fears are hard to dispel with our breath alone. When we go through a period of instability, we fear what's ahead. When we know we have a rest test or a job interview, we fear the outcome. In the moment, we can't see the complete picture, but when the stressful period passes, we never look back to learn from the experience. Life isn't a collection of unrelated events, it's a narrative that stretches into the past and the future. We are natural storytellers, and we can use that productivity to our detriment to tell horror stories about possible future events. Better to try seeing our lives as a single long continuing story, not just disconnected pieces. When you are hired from a job, take a moment to reflect on all the lost job and for failed interviews that led to this victory. You can think of them as necessary challenges along the way. When we learn to stop segmenting experiences and periods of our life and instead see them as scenes and acts in a larger narrative, we gain perspective that helps us deal with fear. Admittedly, we do our best celebrating in hindsight. When we are actually experiencing these challenges, it's difficult to tell ourselves this could end up being a good thing. But the more we practice looking in the rear view mirror and finding gratitude for the hard times we are experienced, the more we start to change our programming, the gap between suffering and gratitude gets smaller and smaller, and the intensity of our fear in the moments of hardship begins to diminish. Revisit long-term fears. Panic and freezing can be dealt with using breath and by reframing the circumstances, but these are short-term fear responses. It is much harder to control the two long-term strategies we use to distract us from fear: burning and running away. One of my favorite ways to understand how these strategies work involves a house on fire. Let's say you wake up in the middle of the night to your smoke detector beeping. Immediately, Immediately you are afraid, as you should be, that signal did its job, which was to get your attention. Now you smell smoke. So you gather your family and pets together and you get out of the house, right? This is fear, put it to its best use. But what if, upon hearing the smoke alarm, instead of quickly assessing the situation and taking the logical next steps, you hurried over the smoke detector, removed the battery, and went back to bed? As you can imagine, your problems are about to magnify. Yet, that's what we often do with fear. Instead of assessing and responding, we deny or abandon the situation. Relationships are a space where we commonly use the solution of avoidance. Let's say you are having some major conflict with your girlfriend. Rather than sitting down with her and talking about what's going on, putting out the fire, or even figuring out what you aren't meant to be together, safely and calmly getting everyone out of the house, you pretend everything's fine while the destructive fire burns on. When we deny fear, our problems follow us. In fact, they are probably getting bigger and bigger, and at some point, something will force us to deal with them. When all else fails, pain does make us pay attention. If we don't learn from the signal that alerts us to a problem, we will end up learning from the results of the problem itself, which is far less desirable. But if we face our fear, we deal with the fire. We have the tough conversation, we become stronger as a result. The very first lesson the Gita teaches us is how to handle fear in the moments before the battle starts. When Arjuna is overcome by fear, he doesn't run from it or bury it, he faces it. In the text, Arjuna is a brave and skilled warrior. Yet in this moment, it is fear that causes him, for the first time, to reflect. It's often said that when the fear of staying the same overweighs the fear of change, that is when we change. It's often said that when the fear of staying the same overweighs the fears of change, that is when we change. He asks for help in the form of insight and understanding. In that action, he has begun to shift from being controlled by his fear to understanding it. What you run from only stays with you longer, writes the author of the novel Fight Club, Chuck Palahniuk, in his book Invisible Monsters Remix. Find what you are afraid of most and go live there. That day in the basement of the ashram, I opened myself to my deeply held fears about my parents. I really experienced panic or freeze reactions, but that didn't mean I had no fears. It meant I was pushing them down. As my teacher said, when fear is buried, it's something we cling to, and it makes everything feel tight because we are under this burden of things we have never realized. Whether you suppress them or run away from them, your fears and your problems remain with you and they accumulate. We used to think it didn't matter if we dumped our trash in landfills without regard for the environment. If we couldn't see it or smell it, we figured it would somehow just just take care of itself. Yet, before regulation, landfills polluted water supplies, and even today they are one of the largest producers of human generated methane gas in the United States. In the same way, burying our fears takes an unseen toll on our internal landscape. Going through the processes of acknowledging fear, observing our patterns or dealing with it, addressing and amending those patterns helps us to reprogram our view of fear from something that inherently negative to a neutral signal or even an indicator of opportunity. When we reclassify fear, we can look past the smoke and stories to what's real, and in so doing, uncover deep and meaningful truths that can inform and empower us. When we identify our attachment related fears and instead foster detachment, we can live with a greater sense of freedom and enjoyment. And when we channel the energy behind our fears toward service and diminish our fear of not having enough and feel happier, more fulfilled, and more connected to the world around us. Fear motivates us. Sometimes it motivates us toward what we want, but sometimes, if we aren't careful, it limits us with what we think will keep us safe. Next, will we look at our primary motivators. Fear is one of four, and how we can deliberately use them to build a fulfilling life. यहाँ पे चैप्टर 3 फियर फिनिश होता है. चैप्टर 4 इंटेंशन हम मिलेंगे विद नेक्स्ट वीडियो में. चैप्टर 3 का फोर्थ या फिफ्थ पार्ट है ये. मैं आपको उसमें मेंशन कर दूँगी, देख लीजिए. और इसके शॉर्ट्स जो है ट्राई दिस शॉर्ट्स में डाल रही हूँ, आप वहाँ पे सब ट्राई करिएगा ज़रूर। बाय फॉर नाउ फ्रेंड्स।